Okay, we are live. Hey, everybody, I've been talking to you a lot about these massive multi-cell terror attacks that are becoming more common around the world, and it's only a matter of time before something like that happens in the United States. You know, you might have been thinking when I'm talking about massive multi-cell terror attacks of some radical Islamic jihad organization like the Iranians, uh, uh, maybe the Russians, maybe Hamas or Hezbollah, something like that. But what if the threat was coming from your own children? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Folks, I want to start out by saying that my parenting policy or my philosophy when it comes to parenting is that good parenting just comes down to one thing, and that's the constructive application of misery in your children's lives to produce character. Now, let's break that down for a second because I get a lot of flack for that. But I say the constructive application of misery. Okay, so not just the wanton application of misery, but the constructive application of it. That is, looking for ways to make your kids' lives more difficult so that they will they will build character in their lives in healthy ways. Okay, not unhealthy ways. I'm not talking about screaming at your kids. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about anything like that. What I'm talking about is being intentional with your children, your grandchildren, about not treating them like poodles and getting them involved in things that require them to take on responsibility, giving them responsibility so they, volume too loud. Okay. There we go. How's that? I reset all that and it went back to where it was before. Okay. So giving your kids responsibility makes their lives tougher. And because they've got to take care of things besides themselves. They can't just be completely narcissistic. However, there are far too many teenagers these days who have been raised by devices and not by their parents. And the devices feed your narcissism. The devices don't, they're there to make your life easier, more fun, more interesting. And so what we're seeing is an epidemic across America that is getting worse all the time. And so this is really important, probably one of the more important lives I'm going to do. And I'm going to share with you our own personal experience with the lack of civilization that we're seeing, the breakdown of law and order that we're seeing in the United States. This goes along with my book, Death of Civilization. You can get this book at chuckholton.com by becoming a supporter as a free download, or you can get a hard copy like this from amazon.com. Just go look it up. Death of Civilization by Chuck Holton. And I talk about what we can do about this in my book. I'll talk about it a little bit today here later on. Now, first, let's talk about a disturbing trend that we're seeing all across the United States. And I've actually reported on this quite a bit for several years now. It's been a while. And it's the trend of teen flash mobs that are swarming retail stores, looting merchandise, and then running away before the police arrive. These illegal teen parties that are getting thrown at Airbnb rentals or vacant homes sometimes, and they often end in terrible property damage and destruction and even violence and death. And I'm going to talk about that with our own experience here in just a minute. All of these events get organized via social media platforms, and a lot of them are organized on platforms that are more geared toward teenagers than they are toward adults. So for example, I don't have TikTok, but every teenager has TikTok. I don't have Snapchat, but the teenagers have Snapchat. And so they're organizing these things kind of away from the prying eyes of their parents. And there have been some of them, which are just, hey, let's have a big party over here at this house, or it goes all the way to attacking innocent people and taking over entire shopping malls. I'm going to show you a video of that here in just a minute. So, as a matter of fact, let's go to that right now. I want to show you a part of this video that is from, let's see if I can find it here. From a South Carolina mall where there was a shooting in this mall. It really is kind of mind-blowing when you look at what happened, okay? And this is from the police. The sheriff got up and reported on this. So let's see if I can figure out how to switch it over there. Okay, here we go. I'm going to be quiet and let you listen to what the policeman has to say. All right. Transition. There we go.
Shooting in Blythewood, Saturday, 2 a.m. 200 kids, young people in town of Blythewood. We have a shooting. It starts off with what we call pop-up parties. This is the social media that went out. Bring your own booze, bring your own weed. Bring your own weed, drugs. This is the party. This is where it started. Starts at a house. Then it goes from there, and these kids then, not just a small group, large group, 200 of them, end up in Blythewood. I want people to watch. This is probably only not even half. This is a quarter of the kids. These are 3 different locations, the Waffle House, car wash, and a gas station, that they invaded the town of Blythewood. And I want you to watch this video and see them run when the guns start. Hear the shots?
Now, that's pretty concerning. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of Blythewood, South Carolina. This is not happening in an urban inner city. This is happening in a small town, or at least a suburb. And in this particular case, it happened at some commercial establishments, but there have been an increasing number of these happening at private homes that are rented for the occasion. And there are actually people out there that are actually making money by organizing these flash mobs or pop-up parties around the country. And this is happening all over the place. So I'll show you real quick. If you just do a search on Google for these pop-up parties, here's what you find. And what you'll see here is just this is news that partygoers detained. A lot of this comes out of Airbnb's own community, because Airbnb has such a problem with this. I'll just turn over to one article about one of these parties. And this is a Airbnb guest accused of throwing wild house party that caused over $18,000 in damages. And this is something that is organized, intentional, 100%. Take a look at this video just real quick.
because you're walking through my yard.
February 2nd was supposed to be just a one-night stay for one college student, but the Airbnb host of this house on West Wildwood Drive near San Pedro Avenue says it turned out to be a night of destruction.
The gut feeling red flags that I did not listen to ended up biting me in the butt.
Chelsea McGovern says hundreds ended up at her two-bedroom, one-bathroom short-term rental property on that night. She says they caused almost $20,000 in damage.
So this is increasing around the country. It's coming into your neighborhoods. I'll run down a few notable crimes like this that have happened around the country. In Los Angeles, California, there were about 50 teens that looted a Nordstrom in minutes. I went and reported on that. Then there's video of it, and they just picked the place clean like locusts in just minutes. And of course, there's nothing the security can do about it. There's 24 teens running around in there. They stole over $300,000 of merchandise and pepper sprayed the guard. There was a whole epidemic of bicycle mobs that were looting multiple 7-Elevens around Chicago not long ago. And in Los Angeles, they had a big problem with that as well. And one of the few times where I actually saw parents do something about it, the parents turned in their own kids after seeing the security camera footage that was shown by the police. Now, that's something we need to see more of. Now, in Philadelphia, there were dozens of stores looted in one night. This is all pre-planned on social media. And here's why it's so effective. It takes the police some time to respond to a massive crime wave in progress. Because if there's 50 people involved in the crime, you can't just send 1 or 2 cars out there. They've got to send the SWAT team. They've got to get the riot gear. They've got to get all that stuff out. And so it can take an hour to 2 hours easily for the police to respond to some major problem like that. By that time, these people can have picked a store clean, rolled up and left, and gone on to another location. And this is what we're starting to see in inner city areas around, well, the suburbs around inner city areas. People come out of inner cities and plan with these social media apps to flash mob. Okay, we're going to go to this store, and then we're going to go over to that store, and then we're going to go over to this store. And they are able to hit them so fast that the police really can't respond except to pick up the pieces. And, this is the kind of thing that is, I saw it in Chicago. I was there this a couple years ago, and there were probably 200 teens that were just rampaging down the Miracle Mile, which is a very wealthy part of town, but they had come in there and just rampage, pushing people out of the way, screaming and yelling, having just on a lark, and they do that because the police can't arrest everybody. And it's the same kind of thing that we see when Antifa comes out and starts protesting. They're not really protesting. They're just LARPing. They're coming out. They all dress the same. They bring weapons. They bring shields, their own riot gear. They have gas masks and goggles on and helmets. And they do that because they come planning to get into it with the police. And it's fun for them because, again, if they're all dressed the same, it's very difficult for the police to crack down on them and arrest these guys en masse. So we're going to talk more about that, but I want to turn to my own experience now. What got me on making the decision to report on this today is what happened at my own house over the weekend in West Virginia. For many of you already know, we have vacation rental that we rent out. We have for 15 years. It's a lodge in West Virginia, up in the mountains in a rural community. Mount Hope is a community of about 5,000 people, and we live a few miles outside of town. We have 80 acres out there with ponds and beautiful views, and it's just a very nice, safe, tranquil peaceful place most of the time. However, over the weekend, we got, and I would say, like I say, we've been renting it as a vacation rental ever since we moved to Panama, which was 14 years ago. And about once a year, we'll have a renter who I would classify as a bad renter, somebody we wouldn't rent to again. Almost all of the renters we've had have been fine people. They leave the house better than they found it. They don't break things. They don't steal things. We just don't have any problems. And it's actually a good way for us to support ourselves and build some retirement income. But about once a year, you get somebody who's kind of uber entitled, that's just a pain and complains or, causes problems in one way or another. But I would say that the guests that we had over the weekend were the worst guests we have ever had in 14 years of doing this. And here's why. They rented the lodge over from Airbnb and said they were bringing 16 people. Our lodge can comfortably accommodate 35 people. We have 19 beds, so that would be people, the couples, people sharing beds. And we're going to do a retreat there for hot zone viewers coming up in October, November, probably the first week in November, more or less. And I would, if you're interested in coming to hang out with us there for a weekend and do some firearms training and some first aid training and talk about personal security and sort of just discuss how to make you and your family safer, then send an email to info@holtonnews.com and Amy will get you the information you need about how to get signed up for that retreat. But this weekend, we had a group that was, they didn't say what they were coming for, but they said they had 16 people. Well, I don't live there and I'm almost never there, but we own a couple of properties around that property as well. And so I was staying at another home that we have that's just across the driveway from the lodge. And because I was there to just take care of some business and just by God's grace, I was there. Thank God I was there. Somebody probably would have died. And so I noticed when people started showing up, we went through right before they came and made sure the house was spotless. Everything was in working order. We always have somebody walk through and inspect it and make sure it's clean. And then the guests started showing up and all of a sudden I noticed, wait a minute, there's more than 16 cars out there. If they've only got 16 people, why do they have more than 16 cars? And I know that I saw multiple people getting out of each car. So I thought I better go meet these guys. So I walked over there and this time, they maybe had 35 or 40 people there, something like that. So I walked over and asked, hey, who's in charge here? And this young man came out, probably early 20s, mid 20s, something like that. Could have been 25, maybe not. But he was a, good looking kid and very respectful. Oh, hey, sir, it's very nice to meet you. Or thank you for having us at your house and everything. I said, hey, I'm just wondering here. You said you were bringing 16 people. This looks like a lot more than 16. I mean, normally we don't really care. I mean, we of course, the home says we can only take 35 people. But well, I said, looks like you got more than 16 people here. And he said, well, yeah, it was a little more popular than we thought it would be. And we got more people that showed up. And I said, okay, well, it's not a huge deal, but I just want you to know there's only 19 beds. And so you're going to have people sleeping on the floor. He said, yeah, it's no problem. We're okay with that. And I was like, all right, well, hey, be cool. You guys you understand that we're in a neighborhood. We have neighbors. And so, keep it down. And oh, yes, absolutely. Sure. Oh yeah. We're just going to have a nice quiet weekend. So then I left. Well, then I went out to dinner, went and saw some friends and came back later on that night. And there were probably 30, 35 cars in the driveway. So now there's a whole lot more than 30 or 35 people at the house, and they're coming and going. I can see them milling around on the porch up there from the house I was in, and so I'm like, getting red flags are going up like crazy. And so I just went in the house and just sort of turned the lights off and sat there and watched out the window as more and more cars kept showing up. And by about 11 o'clock at night, we have surveillance cameras on the outside of that house, which is legal. We don't have any cameras on the inside of the house because that would be illegal and would get us kicked off of Airbnb. But I checked some of the security cameras in the back of the house, and I want to show you what I saw. Let's see if I can find. I'm not positive I actually put it up there. Maybe I didn't. Let me see if I can find it. So I just want to show you what I saw when I looked on the security camera footage. So let me go see if I can find that. Just a second. Now you're going to want to see this. Okay, this one. Well, there we go. Okay, let's see if this will work now. Got to make it smaller.
Keep going. The video's not the end. Go. No. It's this way. No. Rental. Oh my God. Go. The video's not in the bed. What is in the bed? Go. I fucked up. What is in the bed? Oh my God.
People running and screaming. Notice these tents in the background here.
Keep going. The video's not the end. Go. No. It's this way. No. Rental.
Now, where were these people going? They were going out to the pond. Now, it was about 48 degrees out at 11 o'clock at night. It was about 48 degrees out. And that's 11 o'clock at night. You hear them screaming at the top of their lungs, running around. I'll just point out again that if you look over here, these are our neighbors over here. The lights that you can see off just across the way there. And so this is obviously going to be causing problems with the neighbors at this point. So when I saw that, and I could actually hear the music, I was in my house with the windows closed, the doors closed. They were in the lodge with the windows closed and the doors closed. And I could hear what song they were listening to. I could tell what song it was. That's how loud the music was from about 200 yards away. So I thought, yeah, all right, this is a problem. They need to tone it down. So I was just going to go over there and tell them to keep it down and, be quiet, quiet it down a little bit. And I want to show you the video of what I saw when I walked into the house. And what you just miss is there's actually, when I walk in, there's a kid in his underwear standing on top of my coffee table, which is about a $1,500 coffee table, surfing on the coffee table with a beer, and then he falls off and knocks over the coffee table. And you see that on the video. So watch this. Nope, right here.
Party's over. Leave. Get out.
All right, so what you saw there was me walking in. The music's incredibly loud. They're rolling. They just fell off the coffee table. They've all got alcohol. Some of these kids appear to be underage, and there's many people walking around in various states of undress. Now, I went ahead and walked through the house filming at that point and told everybody, that's it. Look, that's it. You're out. Get out. Party's over. This is not what you signed up for, and you've broken your contract. So the party's over. You're all leaving right now. Well, then it didn't take me long as I walked around the house and just alcohol everywhere, just bottles and cans and just everywhere. And it didn't take me long to figure out that there wasn't anybody in that house that could drive. They were all drunk. And so if I was to kick them out and make them leave and they drove off and killed somebody, I didn't want that on my conscience. So I came back and I grabbed the guy in charge and I said, all right, look, shut it down, go to bed. And I mean, the party's over, but you can stay till the morning. And first thing in the morning, you're out of here. Go to sleep, sleep it off. And when you guys are sober again, you're out of here. Stop drinking. And they said, okay. So I left. I went back to the house. I had to contact Airbnb and start documenting all of this. I've got photographs of I don't know if I put that in there or not. Photographs of the cars in the house and the damage that they did to the house. Let's see here. I just want to see if I can add this for you. I don't know if it worked out or not. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So I'll just show you some of the pictures that I took that I turned into Airbnb. And hopefully this will be the right size. Let's see here. Okay, so yeah, these are some of so I was recording license plates. I just want you to pay attention to all the different states. There's Michigan, there's Tennessee, there's a bunch from Ohio, and various other states as well. Now, these are the ruts they left in my front yard by parking 45 cars in the yard. And so I started documenting all this with Airbnb. Airbnb is very biased toward the renter and not toward the host. And so they tried, they said, oh, well, please don't kick them out. Oh, we'll work this out. I'm sure it's fine. And I said, no, it's not fine. And they're leaving and I'm canceling this contract right now. And they said, okay, well, if you want, we need some proof, whatever. So I sent them the video. I sent them the photographs of all the cars, etc. And they, now, by the way, if you are from Ohio or Virginia or any of these states, if you recognize any of these cars, just know that whatever kid was driving these cars, Mercedes and BMWs and Lexuses and Infinities, were basically committing felonies in my house all night. And so you might want to mention to them or mention to their parents what you saw them doing. So I go around and document all of this. Now, this is what you have to do if you have a problem with Airbnb. Is you got to make sure it is very well documented, or Airbnb won't do anything about it. Now, we normally would charge a $750 damage deposit that we can keep if there's damage to the house. Airbnb won't allow us to do that. What they choose to do instead is to self-insure, because they say that only 0.04% of the millions of rentals that they facilitate each year are caused, have a problem. So they've chosen to self-insure rather than buying insurance. And they say that they guarantee any damage to my house up to $1 million. Now, we will find out whether or not they will actually make good on that. We have had trouble with them in the past where we showed damage from a renter and turned it into Airbnb. And then Airbnb came back and said, well, we asked the renter and they said they didn't do it, so we're not going to pay it. Well, if it's just their word against ours, then we're never going to win on that one. And why would they go with the renter's word against the word of the host, right? So what that means is that they're going to try very hard not to pay the insurance. So next morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning, almost 3 o'clock in the morning, I start hearing the boom, 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 boom of the music over there again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I told them to shut it down. So I went over there again, walked in again, same thing. Party's still going. Everybody's still drinking. They're still tearing the place apart. And so I unplugged the stereo and I said once again, go to bed. The party is over. You will not and I said, look, I could make you all go sit in your car right now and leave my house. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you stay here and go to sleep, but you better shut it down. So I went back. No sooner did I get back than boom, 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 the music starts back up. So I just called the police. And it took the police about 45 minutes to get somebody out there. When they did show up, as the police car came rolling down the driveway, the teens must have seen the police car because they shut the music off. And when the policeman walked up, it looked like a Sunday school lesson was going on. And they said, "Oh no, officer, no problem. Everything's fine. We're being quiet." And so the police officer kind of shrugged and went and got back in his car. He no sooner got down to the end of the driveway than that music came back up again. So by the next morning, I had told them 9 o'clock, you're out of here, out by 9. They did make it out. No, they assured me, oh, we'll clean everything up. We promise nothing will be damaged. Everything will be clean. Well, follow your checkout procedures and strip the beds and take out the trash and everything like that. Well, none of that happened. Let's see, where'd that go?
What is in the back?
No, not that one. There it is. Okay, so I'll just fast forward to the damage here. That's actually a video. Won't watch that. Okay, so damage. They smashed the window or the door in the gym. That's beer and liquor just all over everything. I took 36 contractor bags of garbage out of the house. Left slime. The whole place just smells like beer and marijuana. We found drug paraphernalia in the house. We found pills in the house.
They literally stole the TV.
This is our experience with this, okay? This is death of civilization. They moved furniture around. They, broke windows. They broke doors. They dinged up the walls.
They didn't steal a mattress or the TV.
They damaged furniture. And I have like 75-year-old Ethiopian cross that was on the shelf. They smashed that. They took down, now one of the things that I do in the house, this is the missing television. One of the things that I've always done in our house is I believe in having scripture in every room of the house. So we have pictures and paintings on the walls in every room that have Holy Scripture somewhere in the room. They went around and tore down all of those pictures and paintings, tore them right off the wall, covered them up, put them on the floor. And that right there probably tells you everything you need to know about this group of people. Now, what's the upshot of all this? Well, like I say, Airbnb offers to pay for the damages, and we've very well documented the damages. They're probably going to run well over $10,000 to the house. These damages, we're hoping Airbnb will cover them. If they just ask the renter, did you make these damages? And he says no, and they believe him, then we're out of luck. But this is, again, just for those of you just joining, this is something that does not happen on a regular basis to us. About once a year, we'll have a problem with a renter, but most of the time it's minor. This is the worst renter we've had ever in 14 years of doing this. Okay. So I think we're good now for a few years, probably. And, I've always said, I kind of like it when people wreck things in the house. Most of the time when something gets wrecked, it's by accident, not by design. But this was a feature of this weekend, not a bug in this weekend, the damage and destruction that took place. This was premeditated, absolutely flagrant violations of a whole lot of laws. And again, there were underage kids there, I'm virtually certain. And there whole bunch, people running around in various states of undress. It was like Spring Break the movie. It was insane. And I've often said, well, I kind of like it when things get wrecked at my house because then the insurance covers it and I get new couches and new rugs and whatever. So that's how one of the ways that we are able to keep the house up to standard is because we have these insurance policies that cover those kinds of things. And so, we won't come out of it. It won't cost us a lot when it's all said and done. And, the teens know that. One of the teens actually said to me, well, you have insurance. It's okay. And that leads to the kind of more important lesson out of what we're seeing. So not just the looting and the chaos of these flash mobs, not just the pop-up parties. There are just an epidemic of these happening around the country, apparently, hundreds and hundreds of these. And it turns out the kid that organized this party likely did it to make money. So he put out on social media, here's the address of our party, bring your own booze, and it's $100 at the door to get in and spend the weekend that you'll never forget. Well, if he had 100 people show up and they all paid $100, he just made $10,000. The rental of the house was about $2,000, and he just made an $8,000 profit for the weekend. And if the house gets destroyed, so what? So this brings me to really what I wanted to talk about today, and that's a term that's known as moral hazard. And now, the way I was raised, moral hazard was, that the hazards that I faced as a young man when confronted with loose women or something. That was moral hazard for me. But no, moral hazard is actually an insurance term that refers to the fact that when people are fully insured for things, they tend to act in more irresponsible ways. When people know that, if I wreck my car, it'll get paid for by insurance. I got full insurance. They tend to drive those cars in less responsible ways than they would if they didn't have that insurance. And we live in such a hyper insured society where everything has insurance that I think it's contributing partially to this phenomenon that we see around the world, where even going back to like the Black Lives Matter riots that happened during the first Trump administration, at the end of the first Trump administration, these guys went rampaging through cities. They, burned police stations, burned businesses, looted, destroyed things. And the police really didn't do much to stop them because, and I heard this over and over again on the news, well, it's just property damage. Property can be replaced. And so, it's not worth taking a risk of somebody getting hurt with us trying to arrest everybody just for some property damage. So just as a matter of fact, the mayor of Baltimore, when there were a bunch of riots that took place in Baltimore, said, we just need to give these people room to destroy. And by giving them room to destroy, then, the insurance will cover everything and then it'll be fine. They'll get it out of their system and it'll calm down. Well, I just want to say that you've heard me say over and over again that you should always look at everything from a moral component first. What's the right thing to do here? And when it comes to seeing this kind of mayhem around the United States, just stepping back and giving them room to destroy does not seem like the moral thing to do. It seems like abandoning the innocent people who are going to be impacted by this destruction and looting and violence, and not just in terms of property damage, because it goes far beyond property damage. It goes to the heart of what it means to live in a civilized society. That we like living in America because America is a civilized place. We have good rule of law. We can call the police if there's a problem and they'll come take care of it most of the time. I mean, this is kind of the social contract that we have with our society, that you follow the law, you do the right things, and you'll have a good, safe, tranquil, peaceful life. But there are people, as I said yesterday, who intentionally pervert all the good things that come out of living an ordered, civilized life. That they pervert our liberty and make it erotic liberty, and they put erotic liberty at the top of the pyramid of liberty. So it is number one. It is more important than any other kind of liberty. And so, who you want to diddle is the most important thing to many in our society today. But what that does is it subordinates the other forms of liberty that we should be able to enjoy in our country. And the economic liberty that we have, the freedom to associate, the freedom of our opinion, the freedom of speech. Look, when you're rampaging through downtown Milwaukee and burning cars and police stations, that is not free speech. Okay, that is criminality. And if there were no such thing as insurance, and that was somebody's livelihood that was going up in flames right there, then back in the day when we weren't such a hyper-insured country, the police would have done a lot more about it and probably would have opened fire on those people, because in the wars of bygone years in the United States, it would have been completely justified to kill somebody to keep them from just wantonly setting fire to a business, somebody's mom and pop store, a police station, or something like that. I mean, that was without a doubt. When I was growing up, if you ran from the police, they would shoot you in many places. Okay? So if the police tells you to stop and you don't stop, well, bad things were going to happen to you. Trust me. There are very few places left in the United States where that is the case. And part of it is because, well, hey, it's all insured anyway. Now, I would love to chalk this up just to, gun violence or, something like that, but it's not. I mean, this is what the left tries to do, is they try to blame our freedoms and say that our freedoms are what is responsible for this epidemic we see in America. Oh, the freedom, the Second Amendment. Oh, it's the Second Amendment's fault. It's the fault of President Trump. It's the fault of whatever. But in reality, what is causing these things is, I think you can trace it back to essentially the welfare state. Here's what I mean by that. About 80% of the gun violence that happens in America today, and I'm not counting suicides, because if you're going to kill yourself, you're going to find a way to do it. And a lot of people in America choose to kill themselves with guns because guns are easy to get. And it's a quick way to do the job. But in other countries, they choose other methods because they can't get guns as easily. So if you take suicides out of it, about 80% of the gun violence that takes place in America is attributable to gang violence. So you could say, well, we don't have a gun problem in America. We have a gang problem in America. But that's not the end of the story. As a matter of fact, the reason that we have a gang problem in America is because there is a profound fatherlessness problem in America. Not just absent fathers, but passive fathers. Fathers who will not shoulder the mantle of raising godly men and women out of their kids. It's just too easy to let the teachers do it, the coaches do it, and the devices do it, so that the parents are just abdicating their responsibilities in many cases today. And either that, I mean, obviously some of the kids that were at my house over the weekend have never been told no in their entire life. Some of the kids that were at my house over the weekend have never had any check put on what they can do. And you know, mob mentality has this dark magic that when you get a mob of people together, kids or adults, doesn't matter, and they get in this mob, and what that does is it starts to enable the people in the mob to do things that they would never, ever, ever do if they were on their own. I'd say probably most of those kids that were there, if they had been visiting my house with their families at a family reunion, they wouldn't have been surfing in the middle of my coffee table in the great room. They wouldn't have been running around drinking beer, screaming, jumping, skinny dipping in the pond at 11 o'clock at night, because one of the adults there would have slapped them upside the head. But you get these kids together in a mob of other kids, and of course, kids, this is really what it amounts to, is a bizarre mating ritual that we have in America. These parties. I never understood, even when I was a teenager. I get it. If there's a birthday, we have something we're celebrating. Let's celebrate. Let's have a party. If it's an anniversary, let's have a party. If it's if we won the tournament or something, let's have a party and let's celebrate. But every weekend party for no other reason than just to get together and have some kind of bacchanalian revelry. There's no reason for celebration. And so you're not getting together. It's not a party so much as it is an orgy of debauchery, right? And that's what it was at our house. And so there's these kids, they're trying to stand out and impress the girls. And of course, you get a few 12-ounce liquid courage bottles into you, and your inhibitions start to go away, and you get a little, like you think you're a whole lot cooler and better looking than you really are, and then you start pushing the envelope, and next thing you know, there's people skinny dipping in the pond at 11 o'clock at night and surfing on my coffee table. These are the kinds of things that come when there is a decided lack of discipline in the homes. Now, as I said, my parenting philosophy comes down to the constructive application of misery in children's lives to produce character. And that means that I'm looking for ways to make my kids' lives harder, more difficult, not for no reason, for a very specific reason, and that is a constructive reason to build character. So that's one of the reasons we moved to a farm and we got animals. We got farm animals because then my kids had to learn to put other things that were lower than themselves before themselves, because you don't get to eat breakfast until your animals have eaten. You don't get to sit down to dinner until your animals have been fed tonight. And so they've learned to be a servant to beings that were lower than they were, that were of lower station, because obviously an animal is not as important as a person. But we were teaching our kids to think less of themselves and to not be so puffed up. We did not have a television for most of the time that my kids were growing up, or at least we didn't have any channels on the television. We would have maybe a VCR and watch movies once in a while, but we didn't have TV. And it got so boring in my house that the kids had to just go outside and find something to do. As it turns out, they could have been inside playing video games because, man, the graphics are amazing and all that. But as it turns out, the graphics are better outside. And our kids learned to entertain themselves and not have to be force-fed entertainment all the time. And of course, I was there and my wife was there. They called my wife the Iron Maiden because she was a stern disciplinarian, and so was I. I was used to managing a squad of Rangers in the Ranger Regiment, and so Sergeant Holton knows how to take care of a bunch of unruly ruffians. So my three boys, they had a consistent, loving, disciplined father and mother who not only enforced that discipline on the children and made them act right and made them think of others and made them say that they were wrong when they did things that were wrong and ask forgiveness, but displayed that to them throughout the course of their lives. Connie and I endeavored, we weren't perfect parents by any stretch, but we endeavored to display for our kids what a godly man and woman act like, how they act and what they look like and how they treat each other. I taught my sons, you do not sit down at the dinner table as long as your mother is still there in the kitchen preparing the food. When it's time to come to the table for dinner, the men stand next to their chair out of respect for the hard work that the women have been doing to make the meal. And then once the meal is placed on the table and the women have had their seat, then the men can take their seats and we'll pray and then eat. This is something we did consistently throughout my kids' lives. And let me tell you, all of my kids are doing well. All of my kids are paying their own bills. All but one are married, and they're following Jesus, and they're making lots of grandbabies. I don't know that a guy could ask for much more than that out of his kids. Okay? And this is the kind of example that we need in America today, but we don't have it. And we can wring our hands about it as generations before us have done. Every generation thinks the coming generation is going to hell in a handbasket for sure. And obviously, as the brain starts maturing and these jackasses that were in my house this weekend start making more brain connections and getting smacked by real life a little more, get out of mommy and daddy's house, and so mommy and daddy hopefully quit paying for their Mercedes and their cell phone bill, and they have to start actually going to work and doing something themselves. Those connections will start to get made, and they will mature as they get married and hopefully have kids and go on to have good lives and be responsible people in America. But there are entire subcultures of people in America for whom parenting is just not a thing. It's just non-parenting. They have kids and the kids just run wild. They're absolutely feral. My son noticed this when he went to basic training, and he said, they're in basic training, right? And the drill sergeant comes into the barracks and says, y'all better clean up this barracks. And my son said, of course, he jumped up and immediately started, making beds and fixing stuff. And they looked around and there's kids just lounging on their beds, looking at their phones. Yes, they give them their phones in basic training, if you can believe that. That's mind-boggling to me. And just ignoring the drill sergeant. I can't even fathom that. When I was in basic training, if you ignored the drill sergeant, he was going to take your head off. And nowadays, it's an epidemic in America. Kids that just not only have no respect for authority, they have no respect for themselves or anybody else. Because if you don't respect yourself, you're not going to respect anybody else. They have no self-discipline. They're literally as they have as much impulse control as my 2 pet monkeys. And that's saying something. Okay? And that doesn't bode well for America, because you and I, you might agree that, man, there needs to be more parenting going on in this world, but we don't get to go out and parent all those other kids. Now, it used to be that in American culture, when there were kids who didn't get parented, that were out of control, that their parents became the state, the police, the jail system, the, addiction care and rehabilitation system, things like that. That would be their kind of proxy for their parents. But now what we see are law enforcement even stepping back from that role and saying, don't ask us to parent those kids because we'll just get sued, right? Besides, just give them room to destroy and they'll get it out of their system. And the insurance will cover it anyway. Well, as we come down to the end of this, I haven't even been looking at the comments because I didn't want to get distracted from what I wanted to say. I'll look at them here in a second. I just want to say this. No matter how much insurance we buy, there is no insurance against stupidity. And because there's no way to insure against stupidity and ignorance, what we are experiencing in America is the death of civilization. Right here. Now, I'll go very quickly through the hopeful aspect of this, what we can do about it. What we can do about it is start knitting our communities back together again, because our communities have been picked apart. They've been pulled apart by intentional acts of politicians and others, and pitting one against the other in our community. Social media divides people by design. And we try to use social media in this case to build a community of like-minded people who want to help people who around the world, who want to make a difference. And that's why I established my website over at chuckholton.com. I'd encourage you to go and become a supporter over there and we have lots of extra content that we're putting up for you there. But we want to build a community that helps other people, that improves the world around us, that redeems the world around us. But we've got to start in our own neighborhoods. And not only, I mean, neighborhood watch has been a thing for a long time, but we need to go beyond the neighborhood watch. And we need to start mapping out the human terrain in our neighborhoods in order to make it easier for us to call on people when there's a time of need, so that we know what ought to be happening at that house across the street. Because one of the things with these pop-up parties that they're doing is if they're too young to rent an Airbnb, they'll just go find a vacant home, or they'll look on Airbnb and find a home that obviously is not being lived in. It's being used as a vacation property, or a home that's for sale. And they'll just break in, kick the back door in, and then text all their friends and say, party at this address. And then they come in, they descend on the house, and they party until the police show up. Then they all flee out the back and run across people's yards and run away. And the property owner is left holding the bag. So if you are forming those tighter bonds in your neighborhoods, then you'll be keeping an eye on that house that's for sale. And if all of a sudden you see a bunch of activity in that house one night, you'll be like, wait a minute, something's wrong there. And you'll be able to call the police right away and make a difference. Okay. Look, I believe that there may come a time when in America, we have to start taking more responsibility for our own home defense like they do in other parts of the world, like here in Panama. Here in Panama, you can't expect the police to just show up at a moment's notice if you call them. And they're really there not to stop a crime from happening, but to just investigate a crime once it's happened. So you're responsible for your own home defense. So every house that in this country has a fence around it, maybe barbed wire on top and things like that. And I know that we kind of pride ourselves in America on not having to do that, but the time is coming in increasing parts of America where we're going to have to take our own home defense a lot more seriously. There's an annual spring break party, I guess you'd call it, that takes place in Savannah, Georgia. It's coming up this weekend, called Orange Crush. And it is literally sometimes more than 10,000 ruffians, 10,000 teens and young people who descend on Tybee Island in just outside of Savannah and just destroy the place. Last year, they had to completely close the bridges going into Tybee Island because A, there were already too many people in there, and B, there were so many people showing up. They knew it was going to be off the chain. So the police just closed the bridges completely, wouldn't let anybody in or out for the weekend. And this year, they're expecting even more. What happens, though, when they close those bridges is that the people that can't get in just start doing donuts in the middle of the street, doing these street takeovers. They start rampaging through the suburbs, which is where some of my kids live, and just kicking indoors and, causing trouble. And this is becoming more and more common, especially around spring break. I don't know why spring break now it represents the chance to completely throw away all of your morals and just go wild, but that's really what it's become. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over and now look at the comments here and see if there's any questions. Folks, again, you can get a copy of my book, Death of Civilization, which helps you read about what to do about all this by just going to Amazon.com and you can order a copy, or by going to chuckholton.com and becoming a supporter there. You can get a free download of the book over there. So first of all, I want to ask for you to put in the comments whether or not you have heard of these pop-up parties happening in your neighborhood. Okay, yes or no. Have you heard of pop-up parties like this invading rental homes or homes for sale or something like that happening in your neighborhood? Chuck, it's willful ignorance. Yeah, it's mob mentality. Let's see here. Don't think you failed when you try your best, because some kids will never learn. That's right. I mean, all your kids, I always say, a kid probably wouldn't be worth keeping if he didn't screw up once in a while, because that means that he's trying to push his boundaries and figure out, what's possible in this life. And your job as a parent is to allow that kid to get as much pain and hardship as he needs so that he will learn what's appropriate and what's not. But you have to keep that pain and hardship to the line, which is not being permanent, not causing permanent death or injury or dismemberment or something like that. You got to make sure that the price that your kids pay when they're little, when they make mistakes, is safe enough that yes, it'll be painful, but no, it's not going to kill them. So for example, your 6-year-old wants to go play in the street and you tell him, stay out of the street, you're going to get run over. And he doesn't listen. He goes out and he keeps playing in the street. Well, then you go out there and you give him a little encouragement, right? That's why God gave them a back end. And you let them know this is completely not allowed. You do not get to play in the street. I'm bigger than you, and you have to do what I say, because I will force you to do what I say. And that now people on the left would say, "Oh, that's terrible. You're squashing their poor little spirits. You're not allowing them to just determine their own course in life." No, you're not. And that would be exceedingly stupid, because some things in life are just stupid. Now, I've been around this world for 55 years. You kid, you just got here 6 years ago. I know a little bit more about what you ought to be able to do and what you can't do in life, about right and wrong, about good and bad. Okay? And so I'm going to make sure that I impart that knowledge to you. And if you want to rebel against that, that's your prerogative, but it's going to be painful for you. And either when you're little, that pain is going to come from the person who loves you the most. That's where pain should come from. I love you, and therefore I will give you pain to a point that it teaches you your lesson without harming you permanently. And if that's got to leave a few welts on your backside, so be it. And that way, if I don't do that, then you're going to go continue to play in the street until you get hit by a truck. And the pain and hardship will be permanent for you at that point. So that's why it's the most loving thing I can do, to smack my kids once in a while when they need it. And there was nothing that gets your son's attention when he's 10 or 12 years old and he starts, mouthing off or something, and that you just cuff him upside the head and go, "You want to roll? You want to go? You want to go for it? Come on. I'll give you the first shot right here. You don't like what I'm telling you? Guess what? You're living in my house. You're eating my food. You're sleeping in the bed that I provided, and I can take all those things away from you. So you're gonna toe the line, or your life is gonna get increasingly hard and painful." And we had to do that with our boys from time to time. There were a few times that I had to do what was called wall-to-wall counseling with my sons, just bouncing them off all the walls in the bathroom, or in my office, and letting them know this is, what you said to your mother, not acceptable, and I will not allow any man to speak to my wife that way. See, I told my sons that by the time you're 12 or 14 years old, I promise you, I will have given you all of the building blocks you need to be a man. I will teach you everything you need to know. I'll teach you about sex. I'll teach you about defending yourself. I'll teach you about building things and fixing things. And I'll teach you about God, and I'll teach you about nature, and I'll teach you about life. And when you turn, when you get to that point, sometime around 12 or 14, in Jewish culture, they have a bar mitzvah. And once the kid has been through his bar mitzvah, then he is considered a man. Once you get through something like that, then you're a man in the eyes of your society. And so I built that into our parenting strategy, that once you reach that age, son, then I consider you to be a man. You're still going to be living in my house. You're still going to be dependent on me in many ways, but you're going to work for your keep. You're going to treat me and your mother with respect. And if you don't, then I will treat you the same way that I would treat any other man who came into my house and mouthed off to my wife. And that is with a solid right cross to the jaw. Okay? Now, I wrote a book about my parenting strategy. It's called Making Men. You can also get that one on, you can get Making Men on Amazon, of course. And if you want a free Audible book copy of Making Men, narrated by yours truly, just go become a supporter over at chuckholton.com. If we get anybody who signs up as a supporter on chuckholton.com and then just sends us a message, send an email to info@holtonnews.com, or send a message through chuckholton.com through locals there, and let us know that you signed up as a paying supporter. I will send you a free audiobook of either Making Men or my book Prowess, which is the sequel to Making Men. If you already have Making Men, for example, you can tell us which one you'd want. All right. So let's see. It looks like nobody's posting any questions really, and so we're over an hour. So I'm gonna go now. Thank you very much for watching this. Look, let me just sincerely ask you, not just your normal, hey, make sure you like and share the podcast. Look, this podcast is important. I want to get, especially the videos of what happened at our house, I want to get it out on the internet and shown as many places as possible, because I'm hoping that somebody will see some of those photos of those cars and those kids and say, wait a minute, that's my kid. And I had no idea that they were in another state getting drunk this weekend. And they told me they were going to the library or something. I'm trying to, I want to get this out. So please share the link to this video on your social media profiles and just say this is important, and just put it out there. and try to get more people to watch it. While you're at it, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And as I said before, go to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there as well. Okay? So it would be a real favor to me if you specifically for this podcast would share it. As a matter of fact, maybe we can put the link to it in the chat right now. Mama Rissa, can you put the link to this podcast in the chat? And yeah, Susie Q, don't help us with girls. Actually, my book Prowess has a whole section specifically for girls. And so I'd recommend getting that book as well. And many of the things that I talk about in Raising Godly Men would certainly apply to raising godly women as well. And actually, I've gotten more positive feedback on my book, Making Men, from women than I have from men. And that's partially because men don't read anymore. Only women really read. Men don't read much. But also because I've heard from so many women who have read it and then said, oh, if only I had read this book before I got married, I wouldn't have married the guy that I married. Or, oh, if only I had read this book when I was younger, I wouldn't have had all the trouble I had with men because I would have understood what to look for in a godly man. Or they say, I'm going to make my daughters read this book so that they'll know what a good man looks like. Right? So that's another book I recommend. It's called Making Men, 5 Steps to Growing Up. And E. Wonderman asks, can we pray? Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's pray. And then we'll be done. Thank you for watching. Lord God, we just come to you right now and we ask, first of all, just give me forgiveness in my heart for the kids that were at our house over the weekend that just caused so much destruction, not only to our house, but to themselves. It hurts me to see kids just involved in such dissipation and debauchery, because I know that harms them and that grieves your spirit, Father. And so, Lord, I pray that you'd give me a stronger sense of forgiveness for what's happened, and let me, do what needs to be done, but get past this and let us move on. Father, I pray for each one of those kids that you would cause things to happen in their lives so that they would be brought to their point where they have nothing else to call on but you. I ask for their salvation, Father. I ask that at some point these kids would even see this broadcast and would be convicted about the sin that they committed over the weekend, and that they would cry out to you and repent, Father, and be saved. Lord, I pray that you would protect us and help us to learn how to come together as a nation, as a community, as a neighborhood, and improve our own security by improving our relationships with those who live on our left and on our right. And Lord, we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you, and we will see you again.